you want to go off? Which of the two questions do you want me to attempt first, right? So would you want me to attempt question 2 or question 3? Right? So question 2 is about, I think question 2 is relatively simple. It talks about the difference between public and private goods, consider why profit can be made through the supply of one type of good, but not the other, right? The B part of this says, discuss why merit goods may be underconsumed in a mixed economy, consider whether maximum prices or education campaigns would be more effective in ensuring that these goods are supplied in appropriate quantities, right? So that's the B part. Now for question 3, it says, explain the factors that are likely to make the supply of a product relatively price inelastic, right? And discuss the ways in which businesses might attempt to increase the price elasticity of supply of their products. Assess whether these attempts are likely to be successful. Question 3, I also think personally that we should be going with question 3, right? And if we have time, we can do 2B, right? So 2B is a little tricky. So we can do 2B, but 2A is very straightforward. In fact, I remember doing 2A in one of our classes as well, right? So forget about that. Right. Yeah. Question 3, I think that works well. So let's just copy this on our document and then we'll get started. Now students, have a look at this. Now the question here says, where is it? Okay, so this is the question. Explain the factors that are likely to make the supply of a product relatively price inelastic, right? So first of all, you need to define what, price elasticity of supply is, and then we'll talk about what does price inelastic or price elastic means, right? So first of all, the very simple definition that we have been talking about again and again, that calculates responsiveness of quantity supplied to change in product, right? So what's the simple definition for price elasticity of supply? So let me increase the size of this document, right? So price elasticity of supply is a formula that calculates responsiveness of quantity supplied, right, product due to change in product price, right? So that is what it is. How do we calculate this? So then you can write down the formula. So the formula of PES is percentage change in quantity supplied divided by percentage change in product price, right? Is this simple, right? So you can write it also, since I'm writing it in words, so I can't write the formula. You can also write the formula just in mathematical notation. So that will also be fine. You can also write it in words, whichever you think is easier for you or whichever you are more comfortable with, because both things are serving the same purpose. Whether you write the formula in words or you write the formula in mathematical notation, both will be correct, right? So we have defined price elasticity of supply. We have mentioned its formula, that it is percentage change in quantity supplied divided by percentage change in product price. Okay. Now, next we have to explain what is price inelastic, right? What is price inelastic? Okay. Now, for this, what you will do is that you will talk about exactly, we are coming to that, Zohan. So price inelastic supply is when, due to given change in price, the percentage, or you can write it down like this, is when percentage change in quantity supplied is lower than the percentage change in product price. This is making sense, right? So what is inelastic? Inelastic simply means less responsive. Inelastic means, right, less responsive. So how do we calculate this? So how do we get to find out if it's inelastic? That for a given change in price, the change in demand will be less than that. So for instance, if price is changing by 10%, the change in demand would be anything less than 10%, right? So that could be 8%, that could be 7%, that could be anything but less than 10%. Are you getting me, right? So that's what price inelastic is. And the value will always be less than 1. We do know this, right? The same rule apply for price elasticity of demand and price elasticity of supply. So if the value is overall greater than 1, it's more elastic. If it's equal to 1, it's unitary elastic. And if it's less than 1, it's less elastic. Easy. Any confusion so far? Anything that's not clear? Anything you want to ask me, right? So price inelastic supply is when the percentage change in quantity supplied is lower than the percentage change in product price. Easy? We good? Okay. Now moving forward, students, right? Now, moving forward, students, we will uh, talk about that what causes the supply to be price inelastic. The product production is difficult to be increased and decreased. Change in price, it is known as price inelastic. Any confusion so far, right? So we have also defined what price inelastic means, right? So supply that is price inelastic, inelastic price supply means that it's difficult to increase or decrease supply due to change in price, right? So it will be difficult to increase or expand production when you need to, and it will be difficult to cut down on production when you need to. Is this making sense, students? Okay, now what are the factors that cause? Because that's what the question is asking for, right? What factors, right? Factors that cause inelastic supply are as follows. So let's see what Zohan has mentioned here, right? So the first one, right? So Zohan has mentioned less spare production capacity, low quantity of raw material, seasonal product, mangoes, time it takes to produce a particular good. Excellent, excellent. All of these are correct, right? So let's write it down like this: spare, less spare capacity, right? Uh, Shortage or limited supply of raw material, right? Um, then, um, you know, complicated production time takes to produce a good, then it's locally versus imported product, right? And so on and so forth, right? This is making sense? Shortage of skilled labor could be, yeah. Shortage, limited supply of raw material or labor, right? Could be other resources as well. Excellent, excellent. Okay, so I did not write the seasonal thing that you mentioned, right? Okay, so what do you mean by seasonal? Yeah. Right. So the weather, any particular production requirements, like for products which can only be grown in certain seasons. I think that is what you meant, right? That mangoes can only be grown in summers and so on and so forth, right? I think that's what you meant, right? John? Okay, now students, think about this. First thing that you need to be very clear with is that what is price elasticity of supply? So that is change in supply of a product due to change in its price, right? So how we calculate this, that's simply percentage change in quantity supplied divided by percentage change in price. This being said, then you'll say what inelastic supply means. Inelastic supply, if I have to quickly show you with the help of a graph, right? Now, if you remember, if I draw two supply curves, and I ask you which of the two is more elastic, which of the two is less elastic, just by looking at the shape of it, you can tell which of the two is more and which of the two is less elastic, right? Now, if you look at these two supply curves, right? Now, have a look at this. For a small change in price for S1 and S2, right? For a certain change in price for S1 and S2, right? For which of the two do you expect a greater change in supply? So out of S1 and S2, for which would you expect a greater change in supply? Would it be S1 or S2? Right? For which of the two supply curves would you see a greater change in supply when price changes? Now, if you're being confused with this idea, let me show you here, right? So let's assume initially the price was the same, right? Exactly, Abdullah, that's correct. So let's say initially the price was the same for both the product. It was P1. At this price P1, on both supply curves, the total quantity supplied was same, and that was Q1. Easy, easy. Okay, now then if price changes from P1 to P2, now you have to look at this carefully, right? So if price has increased from P1 to P2, right? Now, how much is the change in supply for S1? So there is a small change, right? So the change in supply for S2 is only this much, from Q1 to Q2. And if you look at the change in supply for S2, that's much bigger. That's much bigger, right? Yes or no? It's this much, right? So we can just by looking at the graph tell that S2 is less steep, so that's more elastic. This is less steep, so this is more elastic. And S1 is steep, that's less elastic, right? Right? Okay, so is this making sense, students? So the one that is less steep is more elastic and the one that is steep is less elastic, right? Easy. Okay, now we'll get back to where we were, right? So in the case of S2, increase and decrease. Now listen to me carefully. In the case of S2, increase and decrease in supply, both is easier. Increase and decrease in supply, both is easier compared to S1. Is everyone clear on this? So never get confused. When we say responsiveness, we do not specify the direction, right? Yes or no? Are you getting me? So when you say that your skin is more sensitive to something, right? So that means whether it's hot or cold, your skin will respond more. Are you getting me? So same goes in economics. When we say that supply or demand is more responsive, we mean both directions. Increase, supply is more responsive, increase is easier, decrease is easier. Similarly, if supply is inelastic, increase and decrease both are difficult. Easy? We good? Right? Can we continue? Okay. Now, how does less spare capacity affect your price elasticity of supply? So the idea is fairly simple. What is spare capacity? Spare capacity is the difference between maximum output and current level of output. So how much can a business produce at max and what it is currently producing? That difference is known as your spare capacity. Yes or no? Right? Now the idea is fairly simple. Now the idea is that if you have less spare capacity, now I'll give you an example with the help of a real life scenario. So if there is a hotel, there are two hotels with 1,000 rooms each, right? In one hotel already 900 rooms are booked, right? So it has only 100 spare rooms to to let out or to rent out to customers. On the other hand, for the second hotel, out of 1,000, if let's say only 500 rooms are booked, then it means that there are 500 more rooms that can be rented out. So the idea is which hotel has more spare capacity, the second one. So it is easier to increase supply, easier to accommodate more customers when demand picks up. Easy? We good? Can we move on? Right? And it's always good, students. One more thing that you need to remember, it's always good that when you're doing a question like this, even though it does not specify which product it's asking you about, right? It's always good to give some real life examples so that you can firstly explain your point better and the examiner exactly gets to understand that you are clear with the concept. Easy? Can we move on? Right? Okay. Now the shortage of raw material or labor, nothing else. Whenever there is limited inputs, what does that do? With limited inputs, you can't, produce a lot of output, right? Because there will always be a shortage of raw material, shortage of resources that you need, right? So it's just like saying that if you have limited resources, how much can you produce? So your ability to produce is constrained by the number of resources that you have. Yes or no? So that's another thing that you need to explain. Okay, then moving on, complicated production or the time it takes to produce a good. Yes or no? So if we compare production of a uh, fighter jet with let's say as simple as a car. With a car, know that fighter jet requires more technology and resources, or better word would be more technology and skilled labor, which be difficult to range. So a limited number of fighter jets can be produced within a certain time period. This is making sense, right? Now think about this. If you're thinking about the the production of a product, right? So some products are more complicated. It's as simple as that. So if you think about producing a fighter jet, or let's say a commercial aeroplane that takes 500 or 600 passengers, right? Now it's such a big and huge product, right? I mean, you can't easily increase its output, right? So you have limited resources, it takes more time, it takes more technology, it requires more skilled people, right? Oftentimes even people are a big constraint. Why? Because you don't have enough people available to produce those products. Whereas if you compare something much simpler, like a car or something like that, right? So that will take less time, and therefore it would be easier to produce more cars. And similarly, even when you need to cut on the production of cars, that's also easier, right? Because the machines that manufacture cars, I mean, can be more easily, what should be the word? Let's say if there is an auto industry that's not working very well, it would be easier for that company to sell off its equipment or machinery to other auto firm. But I mean, for an aeroplane manufacturing company, there are already, I guess, only 2 to 3 firms. By the way, you might know there are different airlines. There are a couple of airlines in the world. I mean, easily over 20 perhaps, right? But when you look at the aeroplane producing, I'm talking about the normal commercial aeroplanes, right? So there are only 3 to 4 companies that manufacture. So it's a oligopoly market. So you perhaps might not know what oligopoly is, but oligopoly market is where there are few big firms, right? It's such a complicated thing to produce, and those few companies make aeroplanes for every airline. So if you talk of any particular model of aeroplane, Boeing or whatever, right? So that is the same companies will be producing it for Emirates, Etihad, Qatar, American Airways, British Airways, and so on and so forth, right? Is this making sense? Is it clear on this? Profits continue to increase for the top 100 aerospace companies in the world in 2019. That's interesting, right? Easy, right? Okay, so this is what you need to remember. Okay, then imported versus locally manufactured goods. Now think about this. Anything that's being produced locally, that means you already have resources and raw material available to produce that product. Yes or no, right? So it will be easier to arrange more resources. It will be easier to expand your production and all that thing. But if you compare the locally manufactured goods, production of a locally manufactured good with something like imported product takes more time to get delivered. Given the fact that you need to place an order, it will take some time from that country for the product to be transported from that country to your country. And obviously it will be easier, it will be more difficult for imported products, or more time consuming for imported products to become available in your markets, right? Or become available to the customer. Similarly, if you have placed an order for an imported good, you can't really, go back on that. Are you getting me? Because I mean, you can't be like, we don't need this product right now, you can take it back. You have already made the payment, you have, you know, committed to that transaction. On the other hand, if you're producing locally, you can produce some amount. You first see whether those products are being sold or not. If those products are being sold and you realize that there's high demand in the market for those products, then you can produce more and so on. Are you getting me? So these are this is much easier to increase and decrease production for locally produced goods compared to imported products, right? Now another thing, so for products that require a certain condition that need to be met for the products, and this is usually for agricultural goods, right? So for those products, you have to wait the entire season. So if you are growing, let's say, mangoes in summers, and it's not summer season. So no matter what, how hard you try, I mean, obviously there are nowadays techniques that do let you grow vegetables or fruits or agricultural products in out of season as well, right? Through technology and all that. But I mean, it's not that easy even yet, or expensive. It's an expensive technology, right? Are you getting? So this is another thing that you need to know. So these 5 points would be good enough, right? Sure. So one thing about this. Let's take a specific example. So if you're buying a locally manufactured car, right? So you go to the car showroom. Normally what it happens, right? You go to the car showroom, there would be at least one car of each variant parked there. You go, you make the payment, and you take the car and take it home. Yes or no? Easy. On the other hand, if you're importing a car, right? So you go to the car dealership, you'll make an order, you'll make a you'll book the product, which is car in this case, and then the order will be placed to the manufacturer, foreign manufacturer. Let's say BMW isn't manufactured in Pakistan, so the order would be placed in Germany, or wherever their manufacturing plant might be. So they'll manufacture, then they'll send you, and it takes time. And similarly, if an agent from Pakistan has already placed an order for BMW cars, and now all of a sudden, let's say COVID came in, or recession came in, and the demand for those cars decreased, or now you are, kind of regretting that you should not have made such a demand. You can't go back on it, right? You still have to buy it. Are you getting me? So it's easier, it's difficult in case of imported products to increase or decrease demand compared to locally manufactured goods. Yes or no? Now let's students quickly do the B part, right? Discuss the ways in which business might attempt to increase the price elasticity of supply of their products. uh, Inelastic supply. So in case of imported goods, it will be inelastic. Zwan, right? Why? Because, I mean, you don't have resources. That's why you're not, or you don't have the technology. That's why you're not producing that product in your own home country. And when you have to place an order, it takes some time to get that product delivered. Yes or no? Easy, right? Yeah. Demand thing. People will benefit if they buy locally. But also a supply thing, right? Because anything that's, coming from the outside will take time and so on, right? So it will be difficult to increase supply. Are you getting me? Because there is a complete process and all that. Yeah. What exactly is your question? Whose time? The production time. But still, the product has to be produced somewhere, even if not in your country, in some other country, right? Does this help? Okay, so students will quickly discuss. Zwan, is this making sense? We'll quickly discuss the B part, and then we'll stop here for today. I have to go somewhere, right? So, Zwan, if there's any confusion, please ask me. I'm not able to understand. Like, the supply is there. If people will demand more imported goods, they will be able to produce and supply them. No, they will. They will. Which will be faster. That's the thing. I'm not saying that if there's more demand for BMW cars in Pakistan, the demand will not be met. Eventually, it will be. But compare that with a locally produced car, right? So Toyota, Honda, right? So since their production plants in Pakistan, it's easier, which means also means that we have raw material components available in Pakistan, right? So you can much quickly produce those and make those cars available in the market compared to, BMW, where you have to place an order to the agent, BMW agent who is selling that car in Pakistan will place an order with the BMW auto company. They will manufacture. Then it takes time, right, to get delivered, depending upon from where the product is being imported, right? Then there's entire process of customs that need to be cleared, right? Imported products go through customs department. You have to get their tariffs and duties cleared and all that. Right. I mean, everything, not only being to the production, right? Exactly. So from production to the very last step of getting that product available in the market, because only then they can buy. Are you getting me? Okay. Now I get your question, what you're trying to say. So it's not about how fast you can produce something, right? So perhaps the BMW cars take lesser time to produce, which I obviously doubt, but still the total time it will take to become that product available in our market, since those are imported, will be longer, and therefore it's less lasting. Easy? We good? Let's move on. Okay, so discuss the ways in which businesses might attempt to increase the price elasticity of supply of their products, assess whether these attempts are likely to be successful. So all you have to do in the B part is to just comment on how you can work around these problems, how you can work around these problems, how you can fix less spare capacity, and how can you get, get rid of shortage or limited supply of labor or raw material, and so on and so forth, right? So let's get started here quickly. Okay? Now, for the spare capacity part, what you can do, you can expand your production capacity, right? So as I was giving you the example of this hotel, so let's say it's short of rooms, then what it can do perhaps is that it can set up another hotel in the same city, right? Where they can accommodate. So let's say if there are two hotels in the same city, you can accommodate some of your customers over there, right? So you need to expand your production capacity, and this is true for any business that's facing constraint. Advanced technology, exactly. So depending upon the product we're talking about, if you think about let's say cloth manufacturing business. So with more advanced technology machines, perhaps you can produce more t-shirts with same number of labor and same number of labor, right, and same number of space. So that would help you get around with the spare capacity thing. Then as far as the short, and also comment how much likely it is, how much easy it is. What will this require? To expand your production capacity, you require investment injection, right? The business will need investment funds to get the new technology, to get the machines, additional machines, or to construct the new hotel or whatever it is, right? So do comment on these things because it clearly says how much successful these attempts might be. Yes or no, right? So do a comment on that as well. Shortage and limited supply of raw material. Now that totally depends where are you getting the raw material or labor for. Sometimes there is a constraint which you can't work around, right? So if there is a shortage of a certain raw material across Pakistan, right, or let's say we do not even have that material available locally, we have to import it, and due to some perhaps complications or due to some other things, it takes longer time or we can't import as much as we need, then you can't work around it. But then other things that you can do is that you can look for more suppliers, right? So if it's a normal raw material or normal type of labor, let's say, right? So you can look for more suppliers so that your supply is ensured no matter what. You get me? So that's what you need to comment on. Then as far as the complicated production, nature of the good is concerned, in this we talked about manufacturing a fighter jet to a car. So this is perhaps something that you can't really help, right? So some products are by nature very complicated. It takes more time to produce those, right? So there's a limit to how much you can work around this, right? Perhaps better technology, more efficient production machines, more skilled labor, but still, I mean, since the product is huge, it's complicated, it will always perhaps take more time. Are you getting me or not? Right? Okay, then locally versus imported good, one thing you can do is to replace an imported good with a locally produced alternative, right? So if there's a certain type of car or let's say clothes or bags or accessories that are being produced or that are being imported currently, then the local producers can try to replace those, substitute those with locally produced goods, and that would mean uh, relatively more elastic supply. But is that possible? Would people buy those new brands? Would they test those brands? Are you getting me, Schwartz? How I'm analyzing it? So this is how you analyze, this is how you get to prove your point, right? Because it clearly says effectiveness. Will these attempts be effective, not effective? What will make those attempts effective? What will not make those attempts effective? You need to talk about all these things. And any particular production process. Now for agricultural goods, this is a good example. Now you might know that there is a special type of farming, I'm forgetting the name, where you get to provide controlled environment to your crop, and with special weather conditions and special temperature and moisture and whatever, you get to produce off season vegetables and fruits which are otherwise not grown in those seasons, because you have controlled everything, right? So if they're grown in summers, you can provide that much temperature and all that. So that being said, you can work around it, but again it requires a lot of money, a lot of investment, and that might not be justified. Are you getting me? that might not be justified if customers are not willing to pay a higher price. Are you getting me? So if the price of mangoes is not that high enough to justify the additional cost that you have to pay to grow mangoes in winters, then I mean, what's the point of doing that? Easy. So students, I would want you to attempt this question at home, right? I have to go somewhere, really sorry, right? But still, if there's any confusion, I'll be more than happy to answer this question in tomorrow's class, right? And then we'll continue from here, right? And as I've always told you, do bring in your own questions so that other students also get to learn and, benefit from your questions, right? Okay, so I'll see you tomorrow. Take care and have a good night. Allah Hafiz.